It only seems fitting that I release a globetrotting episode before I fly around the world in a few days, so I found the perfect guest to discuss it with us. Welcome to the Just Dumb Enough podcast, a show that acknowledges no one is always an expert by dispelling misconceptions with real experts. I'm your host as always, Colton Petrie. My guest today is Marisha Wojciechowska. She's more than your average globetrotter, since she's been spending years in foreign lands since the age of 7. Her rich history in each of the places we'll talk about comes through as we discuss what makes each location fun to visit and or relocate to. In case you've somehow missed it all the way up until now, the Just Dumb Enough Japan tour starts this week, like in 3 days. Come and hang out with me when I come through your area. Tokyo, May 18th to the 22nd, Nikko, May 23rd to the 24th, Kyoto, May 25th to the 28th, Osaka, May 29th to the 30th, and Okinawa, May 31st to June 3rd. I'll see you all there, but until then, let's plan our next great trip. Welcome to the show, Marisha Wojciechowska.
Good job.
Thank you. How are you? I'm so glad to have you on the show.
I am so thrilled to be here, Colton. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, so I'm an international consultant. I work in the water policy arena. I work with different international organizations and governments, the United Nations, the Asian Development Bank. I'm based currently in Bangkok, and I actually divide my time now between Tokyo and Bangkok in Thailand. But I'm Canadian. I'm from Quebec. I'm French Canadian, and I'm also an author. I've written children's books on globetrotting, discovering the world, because I really am passionate about expanding children's horizons, expanding everyone's horizons, actually. And deepening an understanding of the world, because I really believe the world is such a fabulous, exciting place.
Yeah, as much as the internet affords us all the abilities to see places, you don't really expand your horizons or live that experience until you've gone somewhere. Really getting, outside your comfort zone is an understatement when you're Canadian living in Thailand.
Yeah, and I've lived in Paris. I've lived in New York. My son was born in New York City, and he's now 21 years old. I've lived in Tokyo, so being out of my comfort zone is my mode of operation at this point.
Yeah, you're there is no comfort zone; it's everywhere. Well, it's wonderful. When did you start traveling? Was it you just started doing a little traveling up in Canada and then started spreading out, or did you just go for it right away?
That's such a great question, Colton, because actually my sister and I have a younger sister, and I always joke that we grew up on the highway, actually, because my parents were both university professors in cities, so 300 miles apart from each other. My mom was a professor at U of T, University of Toronto, and my father at the University of Ottawa. So on weekends, we would scuttling back and forth between these two cities. So really, I grew up on the highway in the car. And then because my parents were also university professors, they had sabbatical years. So every 7th year, my parents would pack up everything and take us over to Europe for the year. So I actually spent a year in Paris for grade school, high school, and even in university. I did a year abroad in university in Paris. And then in the summers, every second summer, we would go to Europe or we would go to Cape Cod. So from Canada, my father really loved Cape Cod and wanted to go to that part of the world. And my mother was really, although my father was the European one, my father was Polish, immigrant to Canada. And then we would spend one summer out of 2 in Europe. So I really, it was meant to be that I was never going to be that I was going to be nomadic and globetrotting.
Yeah, I can't be tied down. Well, it's very interesting, and I'm sure it probably gave you quite a range of perspectives at a young age to see oh, even this section of Canada is different from that section. If you're moving across a province, that's different in itself, much less oh, now we're going to go spend a year in Europe. And you're like, oh, that's a different continent that we're on.
So, and that's so true, actually, because even, even while we were in Canada, because, my mom was French Canadian and Quebecoise. And so we spoke French at home, though we were growing up in Ontario in the English part. So we were always, and then my father was Polish. So while we did not learn Polish as kids, because he really wanted us to learn, to assimilate and integrate into Canada. But he had a lot of Polish friends, and so even that, to be in parties and living rooms and dinner receptions where you don't understand the language, that's something I've grown up with, and that I'm very comfortable not being in an environment and not understanding what's going on is absolutely familiar to me from childhood.
Is it one of those that you like eventually you're like, oh, that noise, like that word that you said kind of sounds like another word that I know in a different language?
That's, and and so this is the thing. So having lived now also almost 25 years, part of my life through and within Japan, by virtue of my husband and my son, who's half Japanese, and we've lived in Japan 7 years in Tokyo, and I continue to have a very big life in Japan. But for me, I understand words, right? I'll pick up words, and though I'm not fluent by any means, I am not fluent in any other language than English and French, but I do understand words here and there, even in Thai. I've been living in and out of Thailand for 20 years as well. And so I'll pick up words and I'll make up a story. And sometimes I'm kind of on the right story, and sometimes it's completely another story. It's okay. I have a story in my head and I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, that is one of those where I was like, okay, I'm going to prep for this interview. Like, I want to look at your work and, see you in interviews. And I look up interviews with you, and it's like, it's in French, it's in Thai, it's like in other languages. I'm like, this is not as helpful as I thought it would be.
Right. But I'm always speaking either English or French and none of these other languages, which, and so that's another funny story, because I first arrived to live in Thailand in 2005, so 20 years ago. And when I'm taking a taxi or interacting with some of the local folks here, and they ask me, of course, one of the always first questions is, how long have you been in Thailand? And I used to say, I used to be very proud and say, oh, I've been here, 10 years, and then they would start speaking Thai to me. And then I felt so ashamed, Colton, that I couldn't even string a sentence more than just like turn left, go right, and stop here, please. I was so ashamed that now I must admit that I say, oh, I've been here for a year. Because I'm too like, it's not it's I am certainly not proud not being able to speak Thai more fluently, or Japanese for that matter as well.
Yeah, but that's a struggle, right? Like learning a new language, especially when you're like very established. You had to learn like English and French, and you're like, okay, I've got these two down. We're good. And then they're like, all right, let's throw a third one at you. And you're like, I'm all set. I got two, and I think I'm good. Like that is not for everybody.
And when I was growing up in Canada, being bilingual, French English was already such a feat. It was so rare to find, perfectly bilingual Canadians. Either you were Anglo or you were French speaking. And there were not that many, as there are more now, but who were really comfortable in both languages and perfectly fluent. And so that was already like, I'm already above the crowd here. And, it's funny because I was presenting my books at an international school here in Bangkok a couple of weeks ago. And these are kids who are either, a lot of them, of course, are the product of bicultural unions, right? Of either Thai or Japanese and foreign, or there are lots of them out here, right? And anywhere, anyways. But I started asking them, these little ones, they're so cute, and I started saying, so how many languages do you speak? Who speaks one language? Raise your hand. Who speaks two languages? Raise your hand. Who speaks? I went up to 5 languages, Colton, and they are 8, 9 years old. and they already are speaking 5 languages. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And here I thought speaking 2 languages when I was growing up was already such an accomplishment. And these little things, beautiful little creatures, are speaking already 5 languages, and not easy languages like Chinese and Mandarin and Thai and English and Spanish. And it's just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary.
Well, and I mean, that's one of those that, like, I mean, we've both been outshined, right, by children now, because there's no way I know 5 languages. So we've both been outshined. But I mean, it's one of those that's really like, I feel like certain cultures value learning multiple languages a lot, and then others don't. You know, I'm in the US, I grew up in the US. I'm one of those that has not nomaded very far anywhere. But, you know, we got 2 years maybe of a language in high school, and that was their like requirement. And that was really pretty low requirement because I took Spanish and my Spanish is bad.
No, I know. And so because my father was European, I mean, there was a comfort there with multiple. My father spoke 4 languages, and he raised his children, us, in his fourth language. French was his fourth language. He was Polish. He spoke German. He spoke some Russian and French. And French was the fourth language that he learned when he was in his 20s, after the war, at the end of the war, because he was admitted at his university after the war. He was admitted to a university in Belgium. And so that's where he learned French. And he ends up marrying a French Canadian in Quebec and raising his 2 daughters in French. It's like incredible. I can't even raise my child in English, though I was, brought up in 2 languages. I spoke French to my child, and so of course he's now trilingual, right? He speaks French, English, and Japanese. But it is also, I've seen with the Europeans. The Europeans really do. My father's mother, 2 generations back here, and my father was born in 1925, so his mother, I don't even remember, in the late 1800s, obviously, but she spoke 7 languages.
It's wild. I met I think, Swedish exchange student, and they were like, "Yeah, we have to know 3 before we get out of middle school." And I'm like, "That's crazy."
And it's not easy. Having raised my son on 3 languages, I mean, and the progression is often, in my case, it was this way when I was growing up, as on 2 languages, and then I saw it with my son as well. One language is strong, and then the other one takes over because of circumstances, either because he's going to a different school in a different language, or because we're in a different country, and then that language becomes stronger. And then the other one sort of lags behind the first one that was strong. So it's kind of like a staircase, this language acquisition. And I'm by no means a scientist in this and child development stuff, but I've seen it from just my own reality. And so it is not easy. It's not easy to push these different languages upon and for kids to be fluent, but it works somehow. The Europeans are clear proof that you can do it.
Well, and that had to be kind of your upbringing as well, right? Like if you thought back to it, going to Paris for a year, like your French probably accelerated far faster than your English did, especially like your dad speaks to you in French, you spend time in a French area of Canada, and then you go to France, like your French is probably much better.
Yeah, no, exactly. And absolutely. And that's why, sending kids to summer camps in different languages, and because you need to be immersed in that environment, and in order to be able to really put it into practice and integrate a language, for sure, and make it like real, livable, vivant in French. We say, it's a living, it's alive. It really has a use, and you can apply it in daily activities, right?
So in getting into travel, like, do you still go back to Canada at all?
Yeah, of course. Up until last year, I even had a house in Canada.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
since that's where you grew up, like, I feel like that's where we should start our world traveling tour, is like somebody who's ready to travel to that area.
Yeah. So, and actually, so I have my book on Quebec and Montreal. It's only in French, though. I only have the French version, so I haven't yet been able to release the English version. But so, Quebec and Montreal. Have you ever been, Colton?
I haven't. I want to go.
Haven't. So it's super fun, and they're two very different cities, Quebec and Montreal. Quebec, is the first church in North America. It's the first. It's a walled city with the rempart, with walls around it to protect the city. It's a beautiful city. And Montreal is a fun city. It's very cosmopolitan with a lot of different immigration waves that have come through the city and that have really enriched the city. And it's got a lot of fun things going on in the summer, especially there's a lot of festivals, and there's the jazz festival, there's the humor festival, there's a lot of creativity that comes out of Montreal. And even in one of my pages on Montreal, I have a page on Montreal is also now a big movie set destination for filmmaking. And so there's a lot of creativity going on in Montreal. That's really a fun buzz. And both Quebec and City and Montreal really have like that European flair. In North America, you really feel a little that European, joie de vivre. And so they're very interesting city, both of them in their own right.
Fantastic. What's the accessibility for someone like me that doesn't speak French? How much of a hard time am I going to have?
So Montreal, because of the very diverse cultural makeup of Montreal, it's very easy to get through Montreal just speaking English. Quebec City is more challenging, I won't lie. There's a lot fewer people who do speak English, but by now, I mean, the tourism infrastructure is really well set up, and everyone is very welcoming to tourists in both cities. So it's and everything is bilingual, right? By law, we have to have all the signs are bilingual, English, French. Survive, I promise. You'll be able to eat, and
I
you'll
will survive. That's fun. I have a trip. I'm supposed to go up to Ontario, so I'm gonna just make a whole Canada thing of it.
Yeah, you should. You should. And really, truly, Quebec has a really interesting flavor to it that you won't see elsewhere in North America. So it's really a very worthwhile destination and super fun.
Yeah, fantastic. So what's the local advice? If you're like, there's one thing you got to see in, Montreal, like this is the one thing, make sure you see it on your list.
I would say for sure the old parts, the old cities, right? The old part of Montreal and the walk around. They're both Quebec City and Montreal. They're walkable cities. So just walk around the museums. The museums are great in Montreal. There's really super fun contemporary art happening in Montreal. The food is amazing. There are fantastic restaurants, right? So those are, and one of the big things also of Quebec is the St. Lawrence River. The St. Lawrence River that flows from the Great Lakes out into the Atlantic, and that's really the thread of Quebec. You can see it from Montreal, and you can see it from Quebec City, and even when you push further out from Quebec City into like 3-hour drive, you'll be able to see some of the whales and So yeah, those would be some of the things that I would highly. And then Quebec City, the old town is a must see.
Are there any areas that you're like, this is overrated or it's kind of a touristy trap? Because that's what I always think about Times Square in New York, is I'm like, it's a street with a bunch of screens and everybody's like, well, I want to see it. And then they get there and they're like, oh, it's a street. Yep.
But I mean, I think Times Square is, of course, it's a tourist trap, and of course it's gimmicky, but it's also so much so that it's a must see as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you got to see it. You got to see it, right? And in Montreal and Quebec City, I don't know. I can't think of anything that would be like stay away from there.
Okay. So where do we go from Montreal? If we're like taking a plane, do we start going west or should we go east?
But we go to Paris?
Okay, let's go to Paris. So we take a flight across the ocean.
Yeah, let's go to Paris. And have you been to Paris?
I have not. I know a lot of people who have.
Yeah. And so when I say Paris to you, what sticks out in your mind about Paris?
To me, I think this is because it's part of the reason, Paris is part of the reason that I have the question, how accessible is it? Is
Mm.
because people that have gone and have told me is they're like, even if you speak like French, they're still going to look down on you at like, look how bad your French is.
Yeah.
And they're like, because they can spot a tourist from a mile away. And so they're like, oh, good, another one of these. Like, yeah, go ahead and try and talk to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you think about like the Eiffel Tower and coffee and baguettes and, very stereotypical French things, I think.
No, and Paris is it's a fabulous destination, of course, but it is not as necessarily friendly as Quebec might be, or the French and the Parisians are notoriously not all that open and friendly people. But I mean, you can still really enjoy the city, and it's still such an amazing city. And now the cathedral Notre Dame has been reopened after that dreadful fire, and so there's so much, and I really truly believe you have to see it. You have to see Paris once in your life. It's really mesmerizing, beautiful city. But yeah, and you have to be sort of aware of your surroundings and more planned out, I suppose, and how you get to the city and how you travel around the city and have it more organized maybe than another destination.
Yeah.
That's less challenging for sure. But there are super fun things to discover. So yeah, the cathedral and the different sculptures, and now they've renovated it. It looks gorgeous. I haven't seen it since it's been renovated, though. The day of the fire, my son and his dad were on the bell towers like hours before that fire, which is
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
We live in Bangkok. We lived in Bangkok at the time, and we're just on Easter vacation at that time or whatever it was. So so yeah, but and then there's also Montmartre, which is that big white church on the top of that little mountain north of Paris, which is really also a spectacular point of view of Paris. And the food, of course, the croissant, the baguette, the wine, the sitting on the terrace to have your little aperitif at the end of the day. It's that lifestyle, that French je ne sais quoi flair that's so appealing, right, to Paris.
Sure. Well, and I've heard people that say like, they go to France and they're like, I only spend one day in Paris. You go to the rest of France, like even all the way north, and they're like, people are so super friendly up here. It's like an entirely different world, but they're like, there's so much history everywhere.
Everywhere there's history. The littlest village will have history dating back hundreds of years, right? So and what's really super fun about France is that it's a very regional setup makeup, right? And every region has its specialties and its food, its culture, its characteristics, and it's amazing. It's so diverse within that sphere of country. It's really, there's so much to see everywhere, all over France. You can pick any region: Brittany, Normandy, the South, the Côte d'Azur, the Alps, the Pyrenees, the Biarritz, the wine country. There's something for everyone in that country.
All right, so contest time here. Which is better between Montreal and Paris for food?
Well,
Because obviously they share a lot of overlap, but they're
yeah.
going to be very different experiences. So which one's really better?
No, but I mean, in terms of the local food, French food is bar none, right? French cuisine is, I would never put Quebec as a competitor to French cuisine, for sure. No, I mean, French cuisine, the dishes are just spectacular. But Montreal offers, and Quebec City, they have amazing restaurants with different cuisines, but for sure, French food wins.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like France has polished.
Unfair competition, Colton.
Fair enough, fair enough. But I mean, it's one of those things like everywhere you go, people have different food that are inspired by their surroundings and the people that settled there and everything else. And I feel like France has been established for so long and they have built their image around like we are the best chefs and vintners, the winemakers and everything else anywhere. Like you'll never find better than us.
And I mean, they do have solid grounds for boasting. But I will tell you, Italy has spectacular food and wines also. And Tokyo is now becoming one of and even Bangkok are becoming gastronomical capitals of the world as well.
I say I live in wine country. I am surrounded by vineyards on all sides for the next 20 miles in every direction.
Lucky you.
Yeah. So I'm like, wine, you have a hard time competing because I'm like, the wine that's down the road was like the top wine at the White House one year. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's my favorite wine. And people are just like, oh, casually, sure, of course, that's your favorite. Like, what kind of contest?
White? Is it what kind of a wine is it?
It was Methven Vineyards Pinot Noir. They also make a fantastic Gamay.
And do you know, I'm even going to tell you that in Thailand, there are a few wineries, and I have tasted wines produced in Thailand that are superb. Yeah.
Awesome. I was going to go to Italy this year, actually, before I had planned my upcoming trip that we'll talk about. But they told me not to because there's some kind of a holy holiday that only happens every like 2 decades or 25 years or something, where they
Really?
like, yeah, where they open up like a door that everyone wants to walk through. And they were like, the whole place is going to be packed because of that. I don't remember what it was now, but I was like, oh yeah, I really want to go through all like the old architecture because I think it has some of the coolest architecture on the planet in Italy. And they were like, do not go this year. They were like, go next year after everyone's done with this big doorway expedition.
And is this like on a specific date, or is it all year long?
No, I think it's a year long.
Well, I have a wedding where I'm a bridesmaid in Italy in October, so hopefully I'll be able to make it.
Yeah, they call it a jubilee. It is the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica.
So in Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to look it up.
I want to do a book on Rome so badly. I'd love to do a book on.
I love it. And so I was like, oh, I can't wait. I'm going to go. And people immediately were like, not this year. They're like, it ends in January of 2026. Like, go then. And I'm like, okay, all right, I guess I'll go next year. Because they're like, it's going to be crazy. If you were put on the spot, then food competition between Italy and France. And we'll do wine as a separate category.
That's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, can I have both?
Only if you give them for two different reasons.
All right, let me tell you. I will tell you this. On my deathbed, the one meal so far that is going to stick out in my mind, and I have had exceptional meals. I'm super lucky. But the one meal that will stick out in my mind is we were I was dropping off my family at the Turin airport, so north of Italy. And we're staying in this inconspicuous little industrial town on the back side of the airport. And we waltz into this restaurant, just like this local industrial zone restaurant. And we sit down. There's not even a menu. And food just starts coming out of that kitchen at the back of the airport here. We're talking about nowhere land, right? And there are just the delivery people and the airport workers. And it was the most amazing meal of my life. It was the flavors and just like the local wine and because it was so unexpected and because it was just like the whole experience was just so mind-blowing because it was like we're nowhere. This is not supposed to be like upscale fine dining, and it was exceptional. And everyone was eating the same thing just because that mama in the kitchen was baking those things that day. The most remarkable meal of my life. So that's and then French food, I will always love a blanquette. I will always love a foie gras. I will always, love, it's not only the food, it's all of that refinement and all of that culture around food and that etiquette around food. And I love it.
Of course. Well, and I think that's the fun one. Like, it feels like a fever dream because I've had one of those before where I walked into a place that like barely had a sign and it was delicious, but there was no one in there for the entirety of the time I was there. And then you leave and you're like, was that real? Like, what just happened to us?
And I'll tell you another funny story of these travel and culinary experiences. When I was in my 20s, early 20s, with my boyfriend at the time, we were traveling through Vietnam. We did a month in Vietnam, and we would walk in for lunch to this. At the time, there was no Google Translate, so there were these signs, and we figured out that's food, right? And in front of these little restaurant establishments. So we'd walk in there and we'd sit down and we'd ask for the menu, and they'd look at us kind of stunned a little bit. But every time they would bring something out of the kitchen and it was divine. Vietnamese food also is just remarkable. Love it. And and then like 3 weeks in, I think, to our trip, we figured out that that little sign meant happy hour. It did not mean lunch. But every time we sat down, and they brought us probably what they were going to have for lunch that day, I suppose. But it was just so good every time.
Nice. See, and that's
told us, well, no, we're not serving food.
right. They're just like, okay, sure.
And of course we paid, so they were happy, I suppose. But
Yeah. But that's one of those experiences that you don't get like staying in your comfort zone in a hometown. Like, you have got to leave because you can't read the signs. You're like, we're just going to guess and hope for the best.
Right. But now, I mean, it's different now with all these apps that we have. The travel experience has completely changed and become so much easier. You kids have it so easy now.
Right. Oh, this generation.
Yeah.
So, Rome book to come. What's our
Yes.
next stop moving east?
So we go to Bangkok.
Bangkok. Okay. So we're in your backyard.
Welcome to Bangkok. So the land of the smiles, right?
Hey, cool. I like
Yes.
that.
Yes. So Bangkok, what shall I tell you about Bangkok? It's really a city of contrasts, right? There's a very traditional culture alongside a very sort of modern culture, which is one of the reasons it makes it really an easy place to live as a foreigner, because you've got all the modern amenities, super contemporary lifestyle. And the Thais are lovely. The Thais are really lovely and very, very accommodating to us. Farangs. Farang is the term for a stranger in Thailand. And so, yeah, so it's really a city of contrasts. You'll have the temples along next to it. You'll have this mega modern skyscraper, which shook quite a bit a week and a half ago, right? We had this big earthquake 2 weeks ago now, I guess. And so, which was so uncharacteristic of the city. It never was expected to have such a huge tremor here. So yeah, and it's so one of the lovely things about this city is the Buddhist culture, right? And those temples they're just glittering at night. They have little sort of mirrors that are mosaic mirrors that at night they glisten, they sparkle. The city is just spectacular at night with those temples and that glitter and that sparkle. And so it's interesting to learn about. So I have in my book a page on a monk's day. So for instance, at 4 a.m. they wake up. They have an hour of meditation and then an hour of chanting. And I actually was super lucky because right now is it finished yesterday, but this is the Thai New Year. So it's called Songkran. And so I was fortunate enough last weekend to attend a monk's chanting ceremony in honor and in celebration of the Thai New Year, which happens now this time of the year. So they wake up at 4 a.m., 1 hour of meditation, 1 hour of chanting. And then at 6 a.m., they'll go out and around the neighborhood, walk around, you'll see them around the neighborhoods, they're barefoot, and they've got their alms bowl where the people will make offerings to the monk, food and soap. They'll make various offerings, and the monk will bless and pray for the people who make the offerings. And so yeah, and they'll have, and then the rest of the day they have teaching, they have chores. So this is my page on monks. So you see them, you see them in the temples, and you'll see them early in the morning, as I say, you'll see them walking around barefoot around the city and the parks. So that's really one of the charming aspects of Bangkok. Bangkok also has beautiful, beautiful landmarks, right? They have the temples that are just absolutely stunning. They have the Chao Phraya River. So I have a page on the Chao Phraya River, and these are the royal barges, ceremonies for special occasions related to the royal household here. So they only come out once in a blue moon, and so and they'll do a procession on the Chao Phraya. Yeah, so it's a city that's near and dear to my heart. Oh, and these guys, you'll see these big guys at the airport. You'll see sculpture of these big guys and in front of the temples, and they're actually called the Yakshi, and they are, according to the Thai legend, they protect the Buddha and its worshippers. And so, actually, in Asian cultures, politeness is really important, and there are different etiquettes for different cultures. But in Thailand, that is also one of the big aspects of Thai society. And the children are very polite. They are very polite in Thailand, and they are very respectful to elders and to seniors. And in the subway, they'll get up, even for me, to leave me a place on to sit down because of my silver hair. And the greeting in Thailand is the Y, sawadika. For women say sawadika, and men would say sawadika. So yeah, so those are different aspects of Thailand and Bangkok.
Fantastic. So I mean, it sounds pretty accessible. Is there are you going to have much problem as a tourist getting around?
Yeah. Thailand probably. It used to be pre-COVID. It was like the #1 destination for foreigners in the world. I think it still is pretty much. It's certainly in the top 3. I think still. So everything is catered toward tourism, and there's a huge amount of tourists in Thailand. Not just Bangkok. They will go also to the beach and to visit other places around Thailand. Yeah.
Definitely.
Easy destination. Easy, safe, super safe destinations. I mean, like where you have to be somewhat careful and aware, but it's and as long as you're respectful and cognizant of where you are and respectful of customs and the rules of the society where you are, then Thailand is a very accessible destination.
Gotcha. It's one of those, if you're American or one of the other louder cultures, you got to bring everything down a bit because you're going to stand out a lot.
For sure.
Because I guess you'd have to give the opposite advice. If, a family that grew up in Bangkok, wanted to visit the US, I'd be like, you got to get louder.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be louder.
You have to be also, so even when my son was growing up, he was in Thailand. We arrived when he was a year old. We were here for a year and a half. And then we came back to live here when he was 9 until he was 16. And I always used to tell him when we left Thailand for vacation or travel elsewhere, I was always like, you're not in Bangkok anymore. You have to watch your stuff. You can't wander off, and here that's not a problem. But elsewhere in the world, it's going to get stolen, kid. So yeah, but it is, when you think of the massive city that this is, with the cosmopolitan, with the amount of people that are here, and even I wrote a post about this on the day after the earthquake. When the earthquake happened, it was violent. It shook hard. We all fled. I walked down 23 stories barefoot, and we all landed on the street. And we were on the streets for hours. All of the apartments, all of the buildings were vacated with everyone left in seconds, not locking anything. Nothing that I've known was stolen. No stores were raided. Nothing. Like, it was remarkable to see how peaceful a society this really is at heart.
Well, and I mean, that's really special to have that ability to like trust and, just know your community. And I have to imagine like it was probably fairly peaceful, even though you had every building evacuate and you're all on the streets. Nobody's like shoving each other to the ground or trying to like trample over somebody to get away. Like everybody's just calmly, okay, we did the thing we're supposed to do. We evacuated. Now we wait.
Yeah. And it was remarkable. And having done earthquakes in Tokyo as well, I was in the big earthquake in 2011 in Japan, and Japan is the same. The Japanese, of course, the Japanese are very used to this though, and they're trained and they grow up, doing these practices in case of the earthquake. And so they have a level of preparedness that Thailand doesn't have. But considering the fact that Thailand and Thais are not drilled the same way, the fact that everyone stayed calm, no one went running to like buy out all of the water or all of the food in the convenience store. Like everyone just like, it was remarkable. It's remarkable that a society of this size and complexity can in a moment of uncertainty like that and fear can stay so civil.
Well, and I guess this is, as we've talked about a couple of these, like Montreal and Paris, and, even when we're talking about Rome to most extent, you don't have to worry about any natural disasters. Like, they're pretty infrequent. The biggest disaster to happen in France was a fire, which is like, that could happen anywhere. It's not like, a hurricane came up through France and ripped the town apart. It's pretty safe. Thailand sounds like it's pretty isolated from a lot of that.
Except for Thailand has had the tsunami in 2004 or 5, and then now this earthquake. But this earthquake, fortunately, did not. I mean, there was deplorable loss of life in one building here that did collapse. But otherwise, I mean, considering the magnitude of that tremor, everything held strong in the city. It's not the case for Myanmar next door. That's suffering tremendously from the tragedy of the loss of life and loss of property. And so, but to get back to this point, Colton, also having grown up in Canada and traveled as a youth in Europe, as I explained earlier, I had never experienced stuff like this until I hit Asia. Namely Japan, which maybe can be our next destination. Shall we go to Tokyo?
I think we should. And this is, I'm sure I've already done the announcement video. By the time this episode comes out, there will already be an announcement about my coming to Japan. And so this is an excellent time for me to prepare and get ready and take notes and everything else I need to do.
Yeah, that is so exciting. I'm very excited for you because Japan is fascinating, and it's on everyone's to-do or wish list at this point. Everyone I meet all around the world, regardless of their age or background, or everyone dreams of going to Japan these days. It's remarkable, and it's very, very, very crowded at this point as well. Especially, the last couple of weeks have been the hanami season, the cherry blossom season, which is so special because it's really a time of it feels like spring and renewal and hope and new beginnings. And so it's a very special time in Japan, this spring cherry blossom. And it's a culture that's so I, as I was saying, my son is half Japanese. His dad is Japanese, though he came to the US when he was in his 18 years old. And for me, I've been going to Japan for 25 years. It's really a part of my life. And it's just so different. Also, because I have a much deeper vantage point into the society, of course, because of my in-laws and the fact that I've also worked a lot with the Japanese, that I love working with my Japanese colleagues in the water policy, water security policy world. But it's a fascinating culture. It really is. And it's so different. And it's so, what's interesting, what you'll see, Colton, when you land is you'll say, oh, well, it's very modern. It's very, there's feels kind of familiar. Like it. But then the minute you start like learning more about it, and everything is different. Everything is different. Everything. And nothing works the way you think it's supposed to work, or the way they think they're going to think, or like it's so different. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating culture, of course, rooted in thousands of years of history and culture. So it's fascinating. You are in for a treat.
I'm very much looking forward to it. It is one of those that, like, when I started looking at, the travel itinerary and like, oh, I'm going from Tokyo to literally anywhere, I was like, oh, that's much further away than I thought it was. And I don't know if that's like a common misconception, but I feel like a lot of people think Japan is much smaller than it is. And it's not that small, like comparatively.
And it's, again, a country that's like France, very sort of parceled into different regions. And the Japanese, I mean, to us, it's like, oh, well, this is all Japan, right? But the Japanese really see each region as quite different in terms of characteristic, in terms of food, in terms, you'll see the food is paramount in Japan, right? Everything is about food in Japan, or about the hot springs, or so it's really, of course, it's beautiful. The temples are bewildering, right? It's really worth spending time in that and immersing yourself in that Buddhist and Shinto. There are two main philosophies, right? The Buddhist and the Shinto temples and shrines. And I have pages on that actually in my book, on how to be able to differentiate the Buddhist temple versus the Shinto shrine, even just in terms of architecture. And for instance, the Shinto shrine will have that batori, this red gate at the entrance of the alley there. You'll know then that you're in a Shinto shrine, versus the Buddhists will have more of they'll have in front of the temple, they'll have like a big pot where you have incense burning to ward off the evil spirits and cleanse yourself. So it's really worthwhile to learn about the culture and the philosophies that underlie those two aspects of Japanese society. And the Japanese will do different rites for different occasions in either one of them. So it's really interwoven into their existence and the way they live.
Well, and that's
right now in Tokyo, there's a sumo tournament going on. Right? So I have a page in my book on sumos. And for me, it's a question also for kids to trigger the reflection on what is strength. What does strength mean to you? Is it just big muscles and being able to push your opponent off the ring? Or is strength more? And so the sumos are actually, it's a Shinto tradition, really. And so the whole universe around that is really fascinating. If it's something that's of interest to you, it's really, really fascinating. And I mean, I think it's fun to watch, and it's fascinating to learn about everything that surrounds the customs. They'll throw salt, they'll stomp to ward off the bad stuff around the dojo. And strength, strength is, and here's where I find it interesting as well, is they are trained athletes. They train from morning till night. It's not just about getting fat and big. It's about, having strong minds, strong, disciplined emotions. And so it's all of that surrounds all aspects of Japanese culture that actually is really interesting as well to dive into.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the thing I love, I think about Japan, like idealistically in my mind, is that like it has such an old established culture around it. Buddhism and Shintoism for thousands of years. They've got, temples you can go to that are 1700 years old, and you just wander into them. And yet, like, if you're in the city, you're also going to see, the newest and highest tech things, and they're moving on the fastest trains. And, like all these things are just so blended together that it feels like you can go from one place talking about, the old yokai, like their evil spirits, and then just move right into like, and this is the World Fair like that we're showing off this year for the new sciences.
In Colton, actually, it's funny that you mentioned the yokai because I have a very close Japanese girlfriend who just published a book on the yokais with the Yokai Museum in Inland Sea. There's a island where there's the Yokai Museum, and she just published a book in partnership with that museum on the yokais.
Oh, that is so cool. I'd love to read that. That's so much fun. Because it is again like, and it's a good example of culture that has almost blended itself together, because like these temples and shrines, which are words that a lot of people use without, concern for which one they actually are, they exist right next to each other, and the people that are going into them like exist right next to each other, and nobody's like, outside like waving picket signs or trash talking like it's a sports game. They're just like, yeah, this is what we do.
Big thing in Japan also, and it's creating a lot of tension right now in Japanese society because it's become such a popular tourist destination, also because the yen is low. It's everyone is flocking around the world into Japan, and they are not all very respectful of the society, of the customs, of the culture, of the landmarks, and so every day on the news there's stuff that's happening that is just like, it's heartbreaking, because in Japan politeness is paramount. Everything revolves around a code of behavior that's ingrained from children. Like my son went to nursery school in Japan when he was 3 years old, and there are things that you do and don't do, period. You don't question it, you don't and so this is how Japanese are raised, and when you're not respectful of that, it is creating a lot of problems in Japan at the moment. So please, people, when you go to Japan, when you come to Thailand, please be respectful of the local customs and culture.
Yeah.
And learn about it in advance. Learn about it. It's interesting. It's fascinating. You don't have to agree with everything. But while you're there, you play by their rules.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those, like, if I'm going to travel anywhere, every time I've traveled internationally, I want to know at least like a base level of the language. And Japanese is hard to learn. Admittedly, I've tried very hard and I've gotten very little distance in. But like I at least understand. I could have, a casual introduction conversation with someone. Like I could get checked into my hotel entirely in Japanese, which I think is like very important. And I've been, watching videos and preparing and all this stuff. And somebody had said like the really big shocker for Americans, especially because again, we're loud. They said it's very quiet. They're like, if you're walking on the street, it almost sounds like you can barely hear footsteps. They're like, even the most crowded places can be almost silent. And if you hear a conversation, you could pretty much point to that conversation and go, that's a tourist.
It is so true, Colton. Whenever I have friends from abroad coming to Tokyo and taking them around, I'm like, you're talking so loud and you're laughing. Wow. And I'm a loud person, but you tone it down. In Japan, I lived in the smack center of Tokyo for 7 years, and it was quieter there than when I went to the countryside in Quebec. It was quieter in the middle of the city, which, by the way, Greater Tokyo is 40-some million people. It's like the second biggest city in the world, I think, metropolis in the world. It is massively big. There's an enormous amount of people in there, and it is super quiet, super clean. There is no place cleaner on earth than Japan. I tell you, when you walk out of Japan, you're like, oh my gosh, the rest of the world is, woo! Japan is people. There are no trash cans anywhere in Japan. When you have trash, you put it in your pocket or in your bag and you bring it home. You do not leave your trash in the city. You just take it with you and you bring it home and then you get rid of it there. So when in change rooms and in big department stores, you take your shoes off before getting onto the platform where there's the curtain and you change. You take your shoes off, even in the change room and this is like, these are things that are so fascinating and that they're not hard to abide by, right? When you're in Japan. And then to get back to the language, Colton, also, I have a page, my first page in my Tokyo book is on the different alphabets in Japan. So Japanese has actually 3 sets of characters, right? It's a mega complex language. It's not difficult to pronounce because there are no tones, unlike Thai, which has tones, right? Thai language has 5 tones, and that's impossible to master. Japanese is not difficult to pronounce, but it is one of the most complex languages ever.
Yeah.
So they have these 3 sets of characters. They have the hiragana, the katakana, and the kanji. Hiragana is the first set of characters that kids, 3-year-olds, learn. And just that one is 46 characters. And it's based on syllables. Ha, hi, ho, he, hu, nani, nu, ne, no. And so it's syllables to our ears. So just that one that's the baby alphabet that kids learn. 46 characters. At the age of 3, they're already able to read, or 4, they're able to read this alphabet. And then there's the katakana. Katakana are for words, foreign words, like pizza, baguette. Those words will be written in katakana. And then you have the kanji, which is, the Chinese characters. And to be functional and able to read the newspapers, for instance, I think it's like 2,000 of those characters. So in grade school, imagine what kids are doing in grade school. They're learning characters, right? And so in my book here, first year, a grade 1 kid is learning 80 kanjis, 80 of those Chinese characters. Second grade, 160 kanji. Third year, 200. Fourth year, 200. And fifth year, they're in grade 5, they're 185 kanji. And we're having trouble with our 26 letters of the alphabet. And they will use those different characters, those 3 sets of alphabets, in the same paragraph.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yes, that was, when somebody was like, oh, well, you'll like Japanese because it's phonetic, is said like it sounds, like it looks. And I'm like, oh, perfect. Like that makes it much easier than English, because English is a nightmare language that we made up all the rules for. So I'm like, okay, sure, that'll be great. And then I'm like, oh, this is a lot of characters. Why is that one smaller than the other one? What's with the dot? Oh no, like, it starts to just compound. And that was one of those when I learned, like, I knew I was learning something when visually I could spot hiragana from katakana. Is I'm like, oh, I can see the difference. Now I know that's a borrowed word, and I should try and pronounce it fast so that I can probably figure out what it is, because that's usually like playing a memory game where you're like, somebody gives you a scrambled word and you're like, what is this? And then you say it and you're like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then some other great things to see in Tokyo. Of course, you have to go up somewhere and see Mount Fuji, and maybe you'll even be able to get out towards Mount Fuji. But that's also so striking in Tokyo, right? When you're in Tokyo, the Mount Fuji, it's really special. It's really the perfect cone, and it's just really a beautiful, and it's sacred, right? In Japan, it's believed to be a sacred spot of Japan. It's the highest peak in Japan as well. And it's just outside of Tokyo. It's just outside Tokyo. And then you'll be able. There's the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. It's free, and you can go up to the observation deck, and you'll have fabulous views of the city. And the other interesting thing about Tokyo is that, for me, it's really like a Lego city. It's lots of little, the space is everything, right? Everything, there's no loss of space in Tokyo. And so it's really, when you see it, it's like little mazes, it's labyrinths and mazes and Lego pieces stuck together. It's really fascinating.
Well, it's like, I wanted to say like the most densely populated place, because they just build up. They're like, all right, we can't build out anymore. Let's just build straight up and down, until you're like, this department floor is 7 stories tall.
Yes, yeah.
They're like, yeah, that's how they fit everything in there.
Yeah. And then in the center of town is the palace, right? The imperial palace, where the imperial household is still the seat of the imperial family, the longest bloodline imperial family in the world, right? So it's really, and it's in smack in the middle. Tokyo is built around the imperial palace.
Yeah. I think they said within walking distance, but they had said like my hotel is within walking distance of the palace, because that's our day 2 plan, I think. whereas Fuji, I think, is 5. But they're like, you're going to have to get really comfortable with trains because that's how everyone moves around. They're like, if you want to go from Akihabara to Shibuya, like, you don't drive there, you don't walk there. They're like, you just get on a train, you take the loop, you'll end up there, it's fine.
No, and then so for that you'll need the Suica card, but you can even download. You can have the app on your phone now, and Google Maps. I mean, when I first arrived in Japan, the first time I was in Japan 25 years ago, the names of the stations were only written even in Japanese. They weren't. They were in kanji. There was no romanji. There were no Roman alphabet letters. So I would have to like plan my trip in advance and count the number of stations on the red line. And then I'm going to change over to the purple line, and then it's 2 stations over. And that was how I was able to navigate Tokyo 25 years ago. And now there's Google Maps that tells you go to platform 3 at this station, get on the car number 7 to be able to do the quickest change into your. I mean, it's become so easy. It's so easy. Google Maps is your best friend, Colton.
Well, and I'm sure, like, having visited there, when you're like 25 years ago, the first time I show up in Japan, you're like, it's so different from then to now, even, where you're like, the amount of things that changed just in that span of time, like, I'm sure has been wild to just watch it happen.
And Tokyo is not even the most striking. I would tell you, and on that angle, the most striking to me, there are two. Hanoi in Vietnam. The first time I saw Hanoi in Vietnam, also, this is almost now 30 years ago, I think, or even more. The first time I went to Hanoi, in my early 20s, it was a silent city. There were only bicycles. Like a million bicycles. It was scary to cross the street, but it was completely silent and only bicycles. And it was just the visions of Asia of the old days, right? Or it was just remarkable. And I'm so happy to have seen it. But now it's a city with motorbikes and cars. And the same is true for me for Bali. Bali is also a destination that I went to 30 years ago for the first time, and that I've been to often, a lot, over the years because I love it. But it's also changed so much and developed so much. Well, and yes, Tokyo also. I mean, Japan changes a lot, but Japan was already such a built-up city, and so I don't get that as much of a contrast between what it was the first time I went 25 years ago and what it is now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and as we had talked about like disasters, Japan has kind of had the worst last 10 to 15 years. It's been really bad.
It's not for the faint-hearted. It's not so having lived through the 2011 the earthquake, and so of course the tsunami was further north and Sendai, and then the Fukushima disaster and the typhoons. Every September it's typhoon season, and the earthquakes again, and it's and flooding, and landslides, and because I work a lot with the water policy community in Japan, I do get a vantage point onto how prepared the society is to handle it, though, Colton. It's we all need to learn from how Japan does this. It's remarkable. It's remarkable, and especially in the face now of changing climate and all of the change in hydrological weather patterns and the water cycle. We need to learn from the Japanese. I mean, there are lots of other people who are doing it. Singapore is doing amazing work as well here in Asia and in even, in Thailand. But we need to be climate proofing and preparing to be able to handle not only the disasters, but prepare and early warning. I do a lot of work also with the United Nations, and the UN Secretary General has called for, 25 countries who are the poorest of the countries to have early warning systems in place to protect populations ahead of time of disasters. So Japan is prone to disasters, but it's also the most prepared nation when it comes to disasters.
Yeah, as I was doing all of my research, like all the places I want to go and see and things, I ran into, I think it's Arashi, which is like their abandoned houses where they're like, it's the city is trying to get rid of this because in selling it to you for very, very cheap, you pay the back tax on it and then you fix the house, like build it up, make it better. And I was like, what's the catch? And they were like, well, a lot of these are old homes and you have to make them earthquake resistant. And I was like, oh, they're like, and in certain areas, it also has to be flood and landslide resistant. They're like, which is a major update from the house. They're like, every house now in any area of Japan has those to code. That's not something you see in other places. Like, not every house out here is just built ready for an earthquake. I know some houses not far from me that would fall over with a strong breeze. So,
No, exactly. And so I mean, while it is, as I say, and I'm repeating myself, but it is a very disaster prone land, but so serious about protecting and preventing and disaster relief. Every household in Japan is supposed to have these bags to be able to hold for 3 days before, if something happens. You're supposed to be able, if within your household, to have food, water, transistor radio that you spin in order to, and that also in that bag, there's that blanket that sort of like, it looks like aluminum foil blanket to keep you warm. So anyway, so every household is prepared.
well, and we already talked about like the big places to see, right? Obviously, like traveling just outside Tokyo, seeing Fuji, going up into the tower and seeing from that. Is there anything I should like avoid if somebody's like, oh, do you want to check this out? I'm like, no, I've heard it's overrated. Or, chotto, like,
I don't know. I mean, there's Kyoto is spectacular. Kyoto is absolutely spectacular. But there are other places that I would say that are sort of a little bit more off the beaten track that I would really encourage you to try to go see. For instance, Kamakura. Kamakura is on the ocean side of south of Tokyo, and Kamakura is remarkable place to see. It's like a little Kyoto, and it's really, really gorgeous. There are beautiful temples, beautiful gardens. It's got that little seaside, surfy, coastal feel to it. It's really, really, and it's not as well known, and so it's not as touristy in a way. Though more and more now. And it's got a very pretty neighborhood, and I love Kamakura. I'm a big fan of Kamakura. And that's where you have the big giant Buddha that you see in all of the tourist photos of Japan. Often is that big outdoor Buddha. And then next from Kyoto, you can go to of course to Hiroshima. And then next to Hiroshima is a little island in the inland sea of Japan called Miyajima. And Miyajima is spectacular, absolutely spectacular. And it's one of the images that you might know is that torii, that red gate in the water that you see also on a lot of the tourist pamphlets and posters of Japan. And it's that temple that at high tide is in the water. It's like floating on the water. And then, so it's a little island where you get the old Edo feel. Edo was the previous epoch in Japan, sort of the feudal times. And you get that feel for what feudal Japan was like back in the old days. And it's just really, really, really special to me. And you walk around, it's a pedestrian little island. You can go up. There's the ropeway, and you can go up, and you have views of the inland sea. Spectacular.
Yeah, Kamakura is on my list. I think it's either right after I come back from Nikko or before I go to Nikko. Check the itinerary. I'm going out there because I was like, oh, there's some cool like pre-designed walks that you can go on. They've got like the trolley that still like runs through, and I'm like, oh, this is such a cute area. I want to go through here. So it's on my list. I know my buddy that lived in Japan for a while. He's actually South Korean, but he lives up here in Oregon now. When I told him I was going to Okinawa, he's like, make sure you bring your phone and an extra battery. And I said, why? And he goes, because they are not going to speak English with you. And I was like, oh, really? He goes, nope.
No, this is one of the things is the Japanese are very unilingual. It takes them so much time to master their own language. So it is a very real thing that the Japanese are not very comfortable in English.
Well, and that's one of those that's like, it's a big change. The culture shock, the accessibility is very different. Because here I get in my car, I drive wherever I want to go. If I was in Japan, like, I'm not understanding the roadways, the laws, the signs, like, I'm operating blind. And so they're like, yeah, you don't drive in Japan. They're like,
Well, I don't.
you get on a train or a bike, and that's it.
I don't drive in Thailand, and one of the reasons, big reasons, being that they drive on the other side of the street, right? That's also a challenge right there. And you're right. I mean, you are driving fine because you don't know Tsar. And yeah, no, and the train goes absolutely everywhere in Japan. And everything is organized for pedestrians. So you go from the train to the bus, you walk like 50 yards, and then you get on the bus, and then you get off the bus and you'll get onto another thing. Like everything is organized for pedestrians.
Yes.
And
Yes. Google Maps, as we said, is my friend. And I've looked at things on it and it's like, no, you're going to walk such distance, get on the train. Walk such distance, get on a different train. You're like, okay, this is a lot of like gaps in my travel. I'm used to like one stop and then I'm at the place I need to go. And they're like, no.
Another place that I would highly recommend is Hakone. I don't know if that's on your schedule.
I think it's on the Mount Fuji day because it's out towards there, right?
That's right, and that you have spectacular views of Mount Fuji. And Mount Fuji, here's where Mount Fuji is also so mesmerizing, is that you may go and it will be cloudy and foggy and you will not see it, right? So it's you earn Mount Fuji.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. I was warned by my friend who lived there that he's like, just don't go in the dead of summer. He goes, your airfare's cheap, the hotels are cheap. He goes, it's also blisteringly hot. He's like, summer in Japan is not a game.
And I live part of my life in Thailand, which is super hot. It's a tropical country, but the hottest place for me on earth is Tokyo in the summer. It's unbearable as far as I'm concerned. It's really no joke hot and humid in Japan in the summer.
So I'm hoping to avoid that. Shoulder seasons, as they say. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for being here. This has been super fun. I could drag travel tips out of you all day long. But
next time we'll do New York and we'll do Singapore next time.
Okay, good. We can do those. But yeah, I mean, please tell people where to find these books and where to find more from you if they're looking for more.
So my website is myglobetrotterbook.com. And so find me on the website. My books are available on Amazon. I also have a book on cells because it's not only about exploring the world for me and the world outside and around us and deepening our understanding of that world, which I think is paramount to many things. But in this world, we need to understand more about each other and therefore to appreciate each other more. But also, I have a book on the cells and cellular health and how our cells function, because that's a trip of its own, right? It's another universe that I find absolutely fascinating, and we can get into that next time. But so the books are available on Amazon. You can link from my website, myglobetrotterbook.com, and find them there.
And I will drop all those links into the show notes so people can just check them out very quick. No worries about spelling or remembering or anything else. Just drop down and click. I feel like I could have you on here a bunch of times because like next we're going to talk about more travel, and then we're going to need to talk about your career working, in the water, and then we're going to need to talk about cells. Like this is just going to be a whole extended trip down the road with you.
Let's do it, Colton. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And happy travels. Happy globetrotting. Enjoy.
As you could tell, the end of this episode just became me discussing the tour knowledge I'll need to be bringing to Japan, but I hope you all still enjoyed it. In ranking news, May is halfway over and the monthly rankings are updated. Number 1, the United States, with California, Wisconsin, and Ohio now at the top. Number 2, England of the United Kingdom. Number 3, Canada, with Ontario still barely leading British Columbia, real close race. Number 4, Australia, with Queensland now dominating the others. And number 5, Ireland, holding that 5th place and now just over South Africa. That's it for this week. Have a great week, a great weekend, and I'll see you back here for the next episode, which won't be live recorded, obviously, because I'll be touring. Until that next episode, pretty pleased with all those things that really help the show grow and really help me out as your host, like rating, reviewing, liking, and subscribing. And remember, you can reach out to dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com or on any of the social media pages if you want to reach me personally. But most importantly, stay dumb.